Episode of CelloChat is brought to you by Carriage House Violins of Johnson String Instrument. Please visit us at www.carriagehouseviolins.com.
All right, and we're live.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm so excited to be here. My name is Michal Shein. I am in Boston. It's an almost beautiful day today. I am a cellist. I am a teacher. I am on faculty at NEC and Boston String Academy, which is an Sistema program, and a University of Rhode Island. And anyhow, I'm here today to talk to you about some bow tips that I hope will be really, really useful. The chat is geared to adult learners, but it's really for anybody. I think it's going to be the kind of thing where anybody can take a lot of things that I think will be, again, really, really useful. So I'm really happy to be back. I gave a chat last year, and yeah, so let's just jump in. You know, when we talk about sound, especially for cello, we think so much of that human voice and that luscious cello sound that we love. And it really doesn't just happen by itself. So I'm gonna be going through 5 concepts to approach sound that I hope will be really, really helpful. And, you know, part of the thing is that we spend a lot of time thinking here and not enough time thinking here. And we often, you know, we have musical ideas and we feel like it's just going to happen with the bow because it's just a stick. But we actually have to do a lot of planning. And so hopefully this chat will give you a lot of ideas how to do that. So here we go. The 5 basic things that I want to talk today with you are basic sound production, for one, dynamics, coordination, chords, and just our overall mindset about the bow. So I'm going to be using a Vivaldi sonata and a saraband from the first suite as some examples, and please jump in and, you know, send your questions as we move along. There'll definitely be time at the end to, you know, for any questions that you might have. But as we go along, if there are things that are burning that you want me to talk about, please send those in. Okay, so I'm going to be sharing this music here. So if you have the Vivaldi Sonata number 5, great. If you don't, I'm going to share it soon. Yeah, so let's jump in. Grab a pencil if you want to take any notes. So basic sound. So when we think about cello sound, you know, that ringing, gorgeous sound. Right, so this is like this sound that's always in our dreams that we want and we're thinking about. And let's like step back and think about what are the things that we need for sound. Well, we need a vibrating string for one, right? So when we have good sound, our string, I don't know if you can see through the screen, but the string likes to move this way and that way. And the other thing that we need is a horizontal motion to get that sound out, not vertical. As we know, if we apply any vertical force, we get that, right? And so we need this way, and we need for that string to super, super, super vibrate. So I'm going to be talking about 2 concepts here that I do a lot with my students. Young, you know, college, whatever stage that they are in their cello playing. This is something that I have found really useful in terms of just understanding how our body weight and our natural state can really help us get that sound. So here are the steps. Now I'm gonna have to stand up, so you might not see all of me. But basically, if you want to do this together, the first thing that we want to do is connect with what it feels like to be very, very relaxed. And there's so many different versions of this type of exercise, and this is just one of them that I offer to you. So the first thing that we're going to do, we're going to stand up. I'm going to stand up, and you'll see sort of my bottom part, and we're going to bring our hands, I'll duck down, our hands all the way up until it's sort of uncomfortable, and then we drop. And when I have my students do that, I'm going to sit down just so that you can see me. I ask them, you know, how does this feel? And often it's like, oh, this is neutral. This feels almost like nothing. And this is ideally what we want to feel when we play. And as cellists, we often do this. We contort ourselves. And the idea is, how do we connect to this while we play so that we have that big, luscious sound? So after you do that a couple times, or 3 or 4, whatever feels good to you, we're going to do the same thing of dropping our weight. We're going to drop it on our string. And this is the what I've coined the thunk. That word doesn't really exist. But it's just an exercise that I've developed from seeing teachers that I worked with, and then developing through my own teaching. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to hold the bow in a fist with the thumb underneath. And what you'll do is you'll bring your bow all the way up vertical this way, and then tilt it a little bit. You're going to tilt it a little bit this way in the air. And I'm going to show you slow motion right here on the G string. We're going to drop down here near the frog. Okay. Probably, again, some of my students who are seeing this, this will be very familiar. What we're going to do is I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to drop our weight like this. 1, 2, 3. And it creates that sound. Now, interestingly, I'm totally relaxed here. I'm not gripping at all. So the idea is that we drop our weight completely. I'll do it again on the G string. So look down at your G string. Do it slow motion a few times so you know where you're going. And looking down. 1, 2, 3. All right, so now I'm in the string, I'm relaxed here, my weight is down. What I'm gonna do now is I'm going to engage the string, or what I call Velcro. I'm gonna move the string side to side. I don't know if you can see that. I'm not actually making sound yet, but I'm gluing that bow. And then once I'm inside, now I just can move to the right, and I have that big, deep sound. Now, the idea then you would do the D string. Let's do it together. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to actually do that again. 1, 2, 3. There. I'm relaxed. I'm down. My weight is going this way. Yeah. I Velcro to feel that connection. And then I move to the right, that horizontal motion. And you'll notice that I'm actually only going about 3/4 of the way because I'm holding the bow in a fist, which I can't get this way, which we'll talk about in a second. So once you do that on the A string and the C string, I usually like to go in that order: G, D, A, and then C. I'll do it on the C string because it's fun. Velcro. Ooh, that feels so nice. Then you can add the bow hold. So what you would do is the same thing, but now here, grab your stick with the other hand, put on your bow hold, okay? And now we go to the right. So you can thunk on each one and put on your bow hold, and then feel it out. And then try it on some open strings, because what you'll see after doing this exercise, what it does is it connects our natural weight with each string. And I start to notice how sort of down I need to be. Notice the C string here. I have to retune. I changed strings today. It's going a little bit all over. So that is a very useful basic exercise in terms of tapping into big sound, but that feels really good, and that we're not pressing anything, because we are bringing down our weight and then we're moving that weight to the side. Awesome. So once you do that on open strings, then I recommend do it on a scale and really tap into this part of your body, especially this bottom part, and how sort of deep and heavy we can be here. So that's my thunk exercise in terms of this first thing that we're talking about, basic sound. Now, going back to what I'd said before, you notice that when we held it in the fist, we only went 3/4. So that actually takes me to the next thing, which is part of playing fully with the bow and having that expressive sound is having access to the whole bow, especially at the tip. And this is an area that for a lot of students, it's a little confusing because it's a little counterintuitive how we can have access to the tip, not just here, but here all the way, in a way that doesn't make us do some weird things here, right? Like coming up here that, you know, we can sometimes see with students. So I'm going to hop on the D string, okay, so that you can kind of see what's happening here. So let's suppose I start out bowing, and I'm going to keep my arm pretty bent. I want you to notice what happens with the bow when I keep my arm bent like the whole time. Okay, so here we go. And so I ended up down here, right? So something didn't work. And you may have found yourself in this position and wondered why. So here's what happens. About, I would say maybe here, about 3/4 of the way, something has to change here in order for me to have access to the tip and that I'm not skidding down. So here's my next concept, which is using the arm as a hinge. So if you hang out this way for a second, you can do this with me, and you open up your forearm, okay, so from the elbow here, and you're just going to open the forearm. This is the action that we're going to use in order to get to that tip, okay, so the arm is bent, and then I'm just going to open up my forearm. So let's do it in stages together. Let's do it on the D string. I'm going to go 3/4 of the way with my arm bent. Here I go. Now, grab your stick with the other hand, okay? Come on up above your frog and open up your hinge, your forearm, okay? Careful to not do something different with your wrist, just very neutrally, okay? Now, if you hop back on, you're going to do the exact same thing. And here I am at the tip. And then if I come back, I reverse it, and then I bring the whole arm bend in, back. Okay, so to practice, you can do it in stages. You could do just on open strings 3/4 of the way. You could do this, just to practice. Then open, stop, close, stop, bring it all together. Then when you're ready, do it as one motion. You could practice with your scale that way too in stages. Now, interestingly, what also happens in terms of playing at the tip and getting sound is that we can either open too late, like we saw in the beginning, and we hop down here, or we open too soon. Now, here's what happens when we open too soon. We get that, which maybe you found yourself at the tip with your wrist down, and that's a result of just opening that hinge too soon. So if you notice, if I open too soon, not only is this is down, but now I can't even have access here. So it's an experimentation to see where is it that I need to open up, where my wrist is not going to do something strange. Yeah. So those are the two main things I want to talk to you about today with the basic sound, this idea of the thunking, of that that weight coming down, hooking onto the bow, that Velcro to the string, I mean, and then moving that weight to the side. And then once we have the doing the thunk with the bow hold, then you can practice with the tip and you can combine the two. And hopefully just those two things already are helpful in whatever you're playing in terms of freeing up sound and using our natural weight and proportions to make the tip work for us. So now that we've got those sort of, introduced or whatnot, let's talk about dynamics, which is the second concept I wanted to bring today. So sound, of course, is not static. And when we hear something very musical, sound is going up and down, and there's a lot of dynamics, and we want to start to think about what those inflections are so that we can manipulate sound with our bow, because there's only so much that our left hand is going to be able to do. So if we think about, for example, soft sound, how can we play softly on the cello or loudly on the cello? We basically have three ways. It depends if we're playing close to the fingerboard, right? Or close to the bridge. So either here or here. This has to do with tension of the string, and I call this lanes. I use that a lot with my students. So if I wanted to play something really soft, I might hang out right on the fingerboard. Right, so I might do that. And when we think about soft, beautiful sound and we are on the fingerboard, one of the nice things is that we can use a pretty fast bow and it'll work great because our string is pretty loose. However, as we get closer to the bridge, we can't do that, as you know, because the string is tight, right? So if I go with the same speed, it doesn't work. So I have to go slower. Yeah, so but I don't need to squeeze. I just need to get in with the weight and then go at the speed that I can. So let's so I find this place near the bridge where I have nice tension to work with, and so that gives me louder sound. So where we are now, there's two more ways of how we get louder or softer, using just more length, right? So if I play, it doesn't matter, let's say just 4 notes, and these 4 notes I just use more bow. Automatically I have more sound. And the third thing is weight, right? So if I use more weight, I'm gonna get a bigger sound. So let's suppose Brahms E minor, right? So if I'm gonna use a little bit more weight, I'm gonna bring down and move it right down. I'm not squeezing, I'm using weight. So let's now think about how do we now work with all of that? Again, when we're thinking about sound and we want to help the bow do the thing that we have in our head or have in our heart, whichever direction it is for you. So let's look at that Vivaldi sonata. I'm going to share my screen. And I won't share it the whole time just so that you can mostly be able to see me, but this is the one, this is the 5th sonata. And when we look, if you look at the top line, I chose a simplified version here so that you can see clearly. This is a sonata that a lot of us play, a lot of students play, and when we just look at that first beginning, it looks like a bunch of repeated notes, right? So I'll play it kind of neutrally. we can use now a lot of the these various tools that I just talked about to think through sound and what we can do with our bow to make really gorgeous music. So I'm gonna stop the share for a second. I promise I'm gonna come back. Though we're really just gonna use the first few bars. You don't really need to see it so much. The idea here is that when we want to be really expressive, the first thing that we need to do, besides learning notes and whatnot, is to sing it, right? So a line like that, right? So we know we're going to make a crescendo through those repeated notes. Now, that first step is really important, to sing. Anytime that you're trying to express something through your instrument, sing it. Because we're all very musical beings. We've been hearing music our whole life. We can easily sing it. And then we want to start analyzing, because just because we sing it and feel it doesn't mean that bow is going to know what to do, right? So often what I hear students, they'll first start out playing like they see an up bow first of all, and so they start at the tip, and it sounds like this. Now, what's happening? We haven't sent what I sometimes call like the email to the bow. We haven't sent the email to the bow what to do, how to do this musical idea. So going back to the idea of different ways to get louder, softer, we can bring in this concept of bow choreography. This idea of planning what we're going to do with the bow. So let's suppose we want that crescendo through that first part. Well, I'm not going to use the same length for every note, because then we're not going to get that. So here's one way I might do it. Again, I'm not going to do the share because you don't need to look at those notes. Just look at my bow distribution. Okay, so I'm going to start up here, but check out what I do. So we started out at the tip, but I started on the fingerboard. Nice and soft, and I didn't use a lot of bow. Now here, I increase bow and I come down, so I do kind of a combo. Now, once you are like, oh, I'm gonna do that, if you like it, practice it on the open string. So this is so essential to having good sound and having beautiful sound, is practicing on the open string the musical idea. So in this case, it would be, and I might do that again. And then I add the left hand, but I still think of the right hand. So and then hopefully it sounds pretty beautiful. And part of it is because I'm helping the bow figure out different ways to make sound that's not just back and forth, and it's using these different elements of sound making to my advantage. Now, this type of thing we use all the time in terms of you have a phrase, it's not really coming out with a bow, figure out what you want and then practice it on the open strings. Okay, so we've looked so far at some basic sound production with that thunk, with getting to the tip. Now, by the way, here, I'm using that hinge so that it's very comfortable. And then we talked about being really clear on the ways that we get sound to either bloom or come down right? And to start using that in terms of making the musical decisions and starting to plan our bow. Okay, so now moving on to the third concept I wanted to talk about today in terms of bow. The first two are so important. The third one is coordination. So many times students are frustrated when things aren't going the way they want, simply because the hands are not coordinated. So either the left hand is going too fast, the right hand is going behind, or it often happens on shifts like that first one in the Vivaldi, this one. So often the bow will get there first, and we get something a little bit not what we want. Or on fast notes where the hands are not coordinated, or on string crossing. So we're gonna let's use the second movement of the Vivaldi. Let me share it briefly for you so you can see or refresh your memory on this one. Here we go. Hopefully you can see this at the bottom where it says Allegro. So this is the movement that starts and so on and so forth. Now, this is where we want it to sound really beautiful, but there's actually a lot of things going on. And I want to show you some ways to practice so that you can have that gorgeous sound and feel comfortable. So I'm going to stop the share so that you can see me clearly. All right, so a few things. So let's talk about when you have fast passages like this one, and it's really in any piece, where the left hand is going at a certain rate, but then the bow is not quite with it. Here is a really amazing way to practice any sort of coordination issue. What happens is the left hand, just for like basics, left hand, the string has to be down, right? String has to be down, and then the bow makes contact, and we have a very clear sound. Great question about string crossing. I'm going to get to it in just a second. Such a great question, and this is exactly why we're talking about it. So when you have notes, suppose basically on the same main string, practice left hand first, Velcro, then right hand. Okay, this is like a very slow motion practice, but it's going to be what's the saying? A lot of bang for your buck, or whatever it's called. So it would go like this, and it's totally out of rhythm. Okay, it's the exercise to basically teach the bow how to be coordinated with the left. So I would go like this. And so on, every note. And the crucial part is feeling that Velcro in between. What happens is you'll start practicing it, and then you'll kind of just do it at the same rate. So you're gonna have to like really force yourself. It's a very mindful exercise. But then you'll see that once you then go back to playing it a little bit more in time, it's gonna feel so great. And then it sounds very, very clear. So anytime you feel kind of uncomfortable in a fast passage, often there's coordination issues, and you can practice this way. Left hand first, Velcro, feel the left hand, and then move the right hand. It sounds very rudimentary, but we need that. The bow needs a chance to really feel each note, okay? So to the question about string crossings. So in a passage like the one in Vivaldi, this one, it looks, kind of easy, but the only reason I can play it is because, of course, I've played this for a long time. But what's happening is that my bow is very aware of the strings, but how do we practice it? So, step by step. First, we gotta make sure that the left hand is solid. So I would do some maybe pizzicato practice. Okay, making sure the fingering A-okay. Okay, even if it's in a little chunk. You might do, I like to double notes, take them out of rhythm and just like that. Okay, so let's suppose the left hand is good to go. Here is the secret. Practice open string. Practice the string that in the order that it's on the music. So in this case, it would be right? So right, so those are the strings that correspond. Practice it and start analyzing, what does the bow have to do? It won't just know how to do string crossing. So if we just analyze those few notes, okay, I need to hop from A string to G first of all, and then I have to hop back. So I might need to practice that a few times because I got to skip that D string, which means that my elbow needs to be ready to elevate with my bow. And then next I have D string. And so now that I break it down, I realize I don't have to super skip all the time. I have a first skip, and then I go next door. And then same string. And when I give the bow a chance to really look at that without the left hand, the bow will quickly start to understand what it needs to do. Also, when we do string crossings, the bow will kind of seize up and kind of not move. And so I want to have full sound. And then bonus points if you can do it with the musical intention, right? So if we go back to the notes, right, we have these inflections. So try to do that on the open strings. And you might be on that for like a week, just trying to, really get that really clearly. And then, here's the thing. When you add the left hand, supposing the left hand is like pretty good, you want to mostly think of the right hand. You want the right hand to lead. So often I will say that the conductor of the train is the right hand. So I'm going to play, but mostly my attention is here, really connected to the strings that I just practiced. I'm literally in my head thinking A, G, A, D, A, like that. So if you work in little chunks like that, you will find that your playing will greatly improve because you're giving yourself a chance to teach the bow what to do. And it's often too hard to do it both at the same time. Yeah. So we want to dedicate time here to, develop all the stuff, but there's a whole other, I don't know what you want to call it, but basically TLC maybe that we need to give to the bow. So I hope that answered the string crossing question. I do this so much, in my own playing, with things that feel awkward. I'll take away the left hand and really analyze what is the bow needing to do. So let's move on to fourth concept. We talked about bow, basic sound. We talked about, that thunk, the tip, dynamics, different ways to manipulate. And now we talked about coordination. So lastly, I wanted to talk this fourth concept, actually, there is a fifth, but the fifth is quick. The fourth is chords, because I find that chords especially, we love to play chords on the cello, but it can be also kind of our nemesis because it can feel uncomfortable. So let's take the saraband to the first suite. This is the one I played a little bit of. I'll share it briefly so you can see. Where are you? Hopefully you can see it. Yeah. Okay. Let me know in the comments if you can't. But this saraband has a lot of chords, and I also picked saraband because most of my adult students in particular love sarabands, right? Like they're just the most beautiful movements in each cello suite. But they can be the most, well, not the most, but they have their own challenges, right? So we have these two chords in the beginning. So I'm going to stop the share so you can see me. So one of the things about chords that we have to realize is that, of course, visually how we see it will affect how we play, because visually you're seeing three notes stacked vertically on top of each other, which is so not the way we play it, right? We play it horizontally. I can separate the notes. We can do a combination of two at the same time and then one separate, but it's certainly not the way it visually looks. And so it's so important, I think, once you know the chord and you can pitch the chord to make sure the left hand knows what to do, right? In this case, let's just take the first two chords. Then now it's time to like look down and connect with the bow and what we're gonna do with the strings. So we have choices when we play chords in terms of how we divide them up. Part of it is tradition, some of it is style, your own, just what you want to do. In this case, for example, that first chord, we can do a roll where we do three separate notes, right? Or we could do 2 and 1, or we could do 1 and 2. Or we could do kind of a combo 2 and 2 and 1. I don't know. Right? All sorts of shenanigans that we can get into. But the point is that pick one. Okay, let's pick 2 and 1. In this case, take away the left hand and practice it with the bow. Show the bow what you're going to do. So we're going to bring that weight down. We're going to move it, right? And we're going to create length. So very much not like the way it looks on the page, which is boom, 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 this way. Every chord will fill out space. It's going to fill a lot of your bow. That kind of a thing. So let's suppose, I always play this differently every time, but let's suppose we're going to do something like... So I'll take away the left hand, and I did something like this. So I'm very aware of which strings I'm going to do together, which I'm going to do separate, first of all. And then I'm thinking a lot of pulling this way. And this is where chords can feel really stuck. I'm going to think this way. And the other thing that will really help your chords is the motion between chords. So the first one, we can live in a bow circle that then gets us, often what happens on chords which makes sound kind of die, is we get to the tip and we kind of stop. We feel stuck. So I don't know if I mentioned this in my previous cello bello chat, but another thing that can help a lot with chords and sound is to move that body to the right. So come along with your frog to help ease. And so that kind of motion will really make your sound bloom. Now in the second half, as you know, we have a lot more chords. So I would practice all of that open strings. Open strings and really analyzing. So even just that, there's a lot there. Then so essentially these moments, especially in chords that feel like we love it so much, but it can feel so tight, is mostly because often we're spending a lot of time thinking here and not enough here, analyzing and figuring out how are we going to do each chord, and really connecting to the resonance, that length that exists within each chord, which again is not the way it visually looks. So we want to pretty quickly get away from the music and, as I said, look down and really connect with what you're doing here, and see if you, even if you memorize one measure or maybe two measures, it's going to feel amazing once you really feel those things integrated. So hopefully that gives you some insight of how to, specifically in chords, make that sound really gorgeous. And that brings me to the last concept, which is this idea of the mindset that we can have around the bow, which is, I find that a lot of the time, and I teach this to my students all the time, I will think like 80% here and 20% here. So once the left hand is comfortable, which is a big if, but let's suppose, you will find that when you're really connected here, you know, to the right side of your body, and very much aware of the string that you're playing on, and that you're connecting with the resonance, that contact point and the vibration, it will help the left hand feel a lot easier. The right hand will not seize up. The right hand seizes up a lot when it doesn't quite know what to do. Yeah, or when it has to switch those strings and it's not ready to string, and it just kind of tightens up. And everything will just feel more relaxed when we are bringing a lot more bow awareness, and we practice these different ways to help the bow understand what to do. So that's mostly what I wanted to share today. I hope that's helpful. Please add some. This is a great time for questions. So here's one from Pascal. How do you make gorgeous sound when changing from down to up or up to down? Bow changes. Great question. Great question. So I have a lot of thoughts about that one. So it works in different ways. So when we're going, let's say we're going from up to down. Okay, let's use the D string for a second. So a few things need to happen. So first of all, when we go up towards the frog, we have a natural thing that happens, which the bow will make a crescendo because the frog is heavy, right? So we have to be very careful when we go from up to down to make sure that we're very mindful of the weight, that we're not crushing the sound as we enter the frog. So we're not getting, right? We almost have to get just a hair lighter as we get into the frog. So that's one. Now, when we're going the other way, we don't have the issue of making too much sound. We actually have the opposite because we're sort of in a weaker part of the bow. I find it very helpful, first of all, to move your body to help access so that this isn't so far away, that you're bringing this a little bit closer. Yeah, Amit Pele talks about this, about, you know, the swaying tree. So being not so static in your body will also help those bow changes. Lastly, of course, your bow hold itself needs to be flexible to allow the change. If we are very stiff here and we try to make a change, it will not work. So we'll get like a bump. course, I'm exaggerating. I'm gonna see if I can come around this way so you can see my bow hold a little bit. If I go this way, I think you can see. So when I'm entering the frog, right, this is up bow, I'm going to loosen up here a little bit, especially here on my thumb, so that I can make the change to the down bow. From this perspective, it would look like this, right? So I allow some flexibility here, and that helps to have a smoother change. Hopefully that gives you some ideas. Nereida, hello, is about how to do a sound lightweight with the bow. So I think, Nereida, you're talking about perhaps a soft sound, which, as we said before, we want to basically play with the weight of our arm and how much we're going to put in. So if I want a very light sound, I have to bring some of that thunking weight up just a little bit. I still want to feel connected, right? So I'm going to be sort of on the surface of the string. Now I can't really do that here, as I said. So it's about playing with how much weight can you do, but then you gotta move. You gotta move that bow. You can't be, it won't work if you're kind of static about it, okay? Next question, Jay, tips for slurring across the strings. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so when we are let's take the saraband. You know, on this part. This part. Right, so here we're slurring a lot across strings. So what happens is when the bow experiences either a change in string or a change in shift, it will stop. It'll be like, ah, and freak out. So for example here, in the Bach as an example. So we want to know that that change is coming, and if I take away the left hand in this example, so there has to be a follow through, a little bit almost a speeding up with the bow in order to make that super smooth. I have to anticipate it. Then here, I have to know that I'm going to move to the D string. And the key is filling out the space between the strings. That's the key. So that it's not to start again. Right? It's not like a step, but it's more of a curve, which means you can practice. I love doing this kind of practice where you might go. Start with one string, slowly hop over to the next string, play them together, and then exit. And that shows you this amazing space that exists between the strings that you can start manipulating. More questions? Okay, great. Staccato. How to bring some more air into staccato. So we could spend like hours talking about different bow strokes, of course. What I find with any bow stroke, and I tell this to my students all the time, you have to figure out, is the bow stroke starting from the air or from the string? Then, are you going to need arm, or are you going to need fingers, right? Or something else. So let's suppose we have staccato, something like this. This is a motion that starts from the air, that in this case is going to use more arm than fingers. It's not, right? It's not that. This is a bouncy staccato. I don't know, Didi, if this is the kind of bow stroke you were talking about. But if you wanted to feel really airy, It has to do with the space between the notes, so that it's not that sort of a thing. But the thing about staccato is often it's actually, maybe this is the slur staccato for the locatelli, another question. Okay, I'll get there in a second. I often teach my students, when they have to play short with the bow, to actually practice legato. So, because it's a coordination issue. So if this isn't ready, it's better for the left hand. Then you can take out a little bit of weight. It's much easier, I find, to have more airy staccato if you start from a place of legato and you take away, rather than starting from already kind of doing that and it kind of feels uncontrolled. So a slur staccato, different bow stroke. So I'll use just, again, I'll use a scale just so that we can kind of look at it. So a slur staccato is when we're kind of making stops along the way. I think this is what you're referring to, or it could be the other way. So this kind of bow stroke, if it's the one that you're referring to, this is where I tell my students that they're going to make stops along with the bus, but they're never going to leave the road. So you can practice on the open string, again, practice an open string, making stops. It's that Velcro that we first looked at here, that Velcro. So you Velcro. So let's suppose it's an up staccato, Velcro, 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 Velcro. You're teaching the bow how to control those stops, and then you might go a little faster. And the Velcro, you're doing it with the first finger and letting go slightly here, but the contact with the string is constant. Then you can go faster. And test yourself, see how many you can do in a bow. And then you would add the left hand, and I would do what we did in that coordination exercise. So let's suppose it's just a scale. So I didn't do that right. Let me do that again. So left hand first, feel it. Left hand first, feel it. Go. And then when you're going fast, you're going to see that it's going to be much, much, much easier to do. Again, it just goes back to analyzing on the open string what has to happen. And then when you have a lot of doodles going on with the left hand, that way of practicing the coordination with preparing the left hand, then right hand, does wonders. It's amazing. What happens often is that the bow gets ahead of the left hand in those sorts of passages. Or we start from the beginning and then it kind of goes fast and we kind of lose the control near the frog. Hopefully that's going to give you some ideas. What are the best ways to prevent injury? Great question. So I would say first and foremost, if anything hurts, stop. Playing should not hurt. There should not be, tension that we just gotta power through. When there's tension, something needs to be attended to, and it's not to just keep playing, because what you're doing is you're cementing muscular memory for something that you don't actually want, right? So this exercise that we did in the beginning, the thunking, is so good, because one of the ways that we have tension and injury is from, especially in the right hand, powering through, squeezing a lot. And this can really, really help to release that. And I would say being aware of your bodies. Often I'll tell my students to not feel that they have to play in a box, right? That we can move, and we want to be mobile so that we're not injured. And as much as possible, to keep our bodies down. The way that especially cellists have tension is by going up, okay, this way, and by trying to like vertically power through. Yeah. And what we have to remember is that the way that we get the best sound, that we feel the best, is when our body is down, almost behind the cello, and that we're going this way, okay, not up and over. Yeah, so that might make you look at what chair you're sitting on. It might make you look at the length of your end pin, little things like that. Now, speaking of the bow, the one thing I'll share is this bow grip that I use. I'll bring it up. It's called String Vision. I'm gonna turn it around. For me, this has been really, really amazing. I'll put my hand. Real YouTuber. This has a little nook for your thumb that has really, really changed a lot for me, because I used to super squeeze and grip, and I really like it because my thumb can just hang out, and so I don't have injuries. I have a lot of students who really like this String Vision. Other students who don't, it's sort of a take it or leave it kind of thing, but it's all to say that we want to find the things that make us feel as comfortable as possible, because we don't want those injuries. Yeah, so I hope all this was really helpful. I just want to really thank Cello Bello for inviting me once again. If you haven't checked out my CelloChat from last year on the Bach Suite Number 1 Prelude, go check it out. It has a lot of ideas of how to practice and approach that first prelude that we all love. And of course, go check out all the chats and all these amazing videos that are on the website and on the YouTube channel. So incredible to have such a resource for us cellists. Please, if you're watching this later, any questions that you want to still have that you have while watching, and put it in the in the comments or whatever. They'll get to me, and I will be super happy to answer them. And thank you again for joining me. I hope this was helpful, and hopefully it was fun. It was for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you.